Tommy Blake's hands were black with oil as he stood in the back of the crowded auction hall on Asteroid Station Nero 9. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. The half credit in his pocket was literally every penny he owned. Around him, alien traders chattered in a dozen languages. Big insectoid creatures with 4 arms gestured wildly at holographic displays. Floating jellyfish-like beings pulsed with bioluminescent interest. A group of lizard people hissed negotiations in the corner. Tommy was the only human in the room, as usual. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, his triple-jointed fingers tapping the podium. He was a Krell, all purple skin and bored expression. Derelict vessel, Sector 7B, embedded in asteroid rock. Been there 53 years according to our scans. Starting bid, 1 credit. The display screen flickered to life, showing a pathetic sight. A ship, or what was left of one, jutted from solid rock like a broken tooth. Rust covered every surface. One wing was completely gone. The hull had more holes than metal. Nobody said a word. A few aliens actually laughed. Come on, folks, the auctioneer said without enthusiasm. Scrap metal alone is worth half a credit. Do I hear 1 credit? Silence. Someone in the back made a rude noise. Tommy's landlord had kicked him out that morning. His tool bag and a sleeping roll were literally all his possessions now. He'd been sleeping in maintenance tunnels for 3 nights, dodging security drones. That ship, worthless as it was, had 4 walls and a door that locked. Half a credit, Tommy called out before he could stop himself. The entire room turned to stare. Then they burst out laughing. The Krell auctioneer's face split into something that might have been a smile on his species. The human mechanic bids half a credit on a floating coffin. Anyone want to save this poor fool from himself? More laughter. Nobody raised a hand. Well then, the auctioneer said, still grinning. Sold to the desperate human for half a credit. May the stars have mercy on your poor choices, Tommy Blake. Tommy transferred his last half credit, feeling his stomach sink. He just bought a hunk of junk with money that could have bought him 3 meals. But at least he'd have somewhere to sleep tonight. The station manager, a helpful woman named Rita, gave him the access codes and directions. Sector 7B, Dock 17. It's a 20-minute walk through the mining tunnels. You sure about this, Tommy? That thing hasn't had power in decades. I'm sure, Tommy lied. The walk through the tunnels was cold and dark. Tommy's breath fogged in the thin atmosphere. He passed mining equipment, all of it operated by non-humans. Humanity had a reputation in the Federation as decent mechanics and laborious, nothing special. No cybernetic implants like the Zentari. No hive mind problem solving like the Collective. Just average workers who fixed things and didn't complain much. Dock 17 was at the end of a forgotten corridor. Emergency lights barely worked. The ship sat behind a rusted airlock, half buried in the asteroid's surface like it had crashed there a lifetime ago. Tommy cycled the airlock, not expecting it to work. To his surprise, it groaned open with a hiss of stale air. The interior was dark as a tomb. Tommy clicked on his flashlight, and dust particles danced in the beam. The design was immediately wrong. Tommy had fixed hundreds of ships, and he knew Federation standard layouts by heart. This was different. Older. Way older. Manual controls lined the walls. Actual physical switches and buttons instead of holographic interfaces. Backup systems upon backup systems, like whoever built this didn't trust computers. The pilot's chair was worn leather, cracked with age. Tommy moved deeper into the ship, his footsteps echoing. The walls were thick, reinforced. This wasn't a cargo hauler or a mining vessel. The design spoke of something else entirely. In the cockpit, his flashlight beam caught faded letters stenciled above the main console. Tommy's heart stopped. USS Liberty. American lettering. English words. This was a human ship. But that was impossible. Humans had only been in the Federation for 200 years, and before that, according to every history book, they'd been peaceful explorers grateful to join the galactic community. This ship looked 3 times that old, and it definitely wasn't built for peaceful exploration. Tommy's hands shook as he found the emergency power switch. He pulled it, not expecting anything. Deep in the ship's belly, something groaned. Lights flickered. One by one, ancient systems began to hum. He moved to the cargo bay, drawn by instinct. The door was sealed, locked with a mechanical combination that had no business still working. Tommy spent 20 minutes cracking it with his tools. The door opened with a screech of metal on metal. Inside, the cargo bay was nearly empty. Just a few supply crates and one wall that made Tommy's blood run cold. Someone had carved words into the metal with a plasma torch, letters 3 feet high. They made US forget. Don't let them win. Captain Robert Hayes, 2647. Below that, a single phrase that changed everything. We didn't join. We surrendered. Tommy backed away from the wall, his mind racing. The date was 200 years ago, right when humanity joined the Federation. But the history book said it was peaceful. A mutual agreement. Representatives from Earth shaking hands with alien diplomats. This message told a very different story. The ship's reactor hummed louder now, warming up after decades of sleep. Somewhere in the walls, systems were coming online. Tommy heard a click, then a hiss, then a voice that made him jump. Well. Took you people long enough. Tommy spun around, his wrench raised like a weapon. The voice had come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the ship's walls. Relax, kid. I'm not gonna hurt you. Can't exactly throw a punch when I'm just a computer program. The voice was deep, rough, with an accent Tommy had only heard in old Earth movies. Name's Mac. Military Adaptive Computer. I've been sitting in this tin can for 217 years waiting for one of you sheep to wake up. Who are you calling sheep? Tommy asked, his heart still pounding. You. All of humanity. Walking around the galaxy with your heads down, fixing alien machines, saying yes sir and no sir like good little workers. You know what humans used to be? We used to make other species nervous just by walking into a room. Tommy lowered his wrench slowly. That's not what the history books say. History books. Mac laughed bitterly. Let me show you what your history books left out. The ship's main console lit up. Files began scrolling across the screen faster than Tommy could read. Ship manifests. Military records. Battle reports. Strategic plans. All of it human, all of it old, and none of it matched anything Tommy had learned in school. What is this? Tommy whispered. The truth. Give me 3 weeks to decrypt the damaged files in the black box, and I'll show you what the Federation took from us. Tommy spent those 3 weeks living in the Liberty, working during the day on mining equipment to earn food credits, and spending every night watching Max slowly piece together the ship's logs. What he learned made him sick. Captain Robert Hayes had been a military commander, not an explorer. The Liberty was a warship, one of thousands in something called the Terran Defense Fleet. 200 years ago, humanity had been expanding fast, colonizing systems, building a civilization that made the Federation nervous. Why would we make them nervous? Tommy asked one night, staring at footage of human ships in formation. Because we were unpredictable, Mac explained. Every other species in the Federation follows patterns. The Zentari always use logic. The collective always moves as one mind. The Krell always negotiate first. But humans? You people were chaos. One human commander would surrender peacefully. Another would fight to the last ship. A third would pretend to surrender then blow up the enemy flagship with a hidden bomb. The Federation's probability computers couldn't predict what humans would do next, and that scared them. The logs showed first contact. It hadn't been peaceful. The Federation had demanded humanity stop expanding, claiming the territory as theirs. Earth's government had refused. War had followed. But it wasn't a war of lasers and explosions like Tommy imagined. It was something stranger, something worse. They didn't invade Earth, Mac continued, pulling up diplomatic records. They were smarter than that. They knew humans would fight like cornered rats if directly threatened. So they did something clever. They offered peace. They offered technology. They offered a seat at the big table. Tommy watched as the files showed Federation diplomats meeting with Earth leaders. Trade agreements. Technology exchanges. Cultural programs. On the surface, it all looked friendly. What's wrong with that? Tommy asked. Everything. Look closer. Mac highlighted specific sections. The Federation had insisted on educational reform as part of the peace treaty. They'd provided textbooks for human schools. Funded universities. Sent teachers. All very generous, except every single change removed something important. Military history, deleted. Replaced with peaceful exploration stories. Human martial arts and combat sports, discouraged as primitive. Self-defense courses, removed from schools because the Federation provided security. Even human literature changed. Books about revolution, independence, and fighting against oppression slowly disappeared from libraries. They didn't erase our history in one day, Max said quietly. They did it slowly, over 3 generations. Your great-grandparents remembered what humans used to be. Your grandparents learned the new history in school but heard old stories at home. Your parents only knew what the Federation taught them. And you? You don't even know what you lost. Tommy felt cold. But why? Why go through all that trouble? Because the Federation learned something a long time ago. You can't control a species by conquering them. Conquered people rebel. But you can control them by making them forget they were ever free. They did it to 6 species before us. The Krell used to be warriors. The Ven used to be explorers. Now they're all good Federation citizens who don't remember being anything else. That's insane. Someone would have noticed. Someone would have said something. They did. Captain Hayes did. That's why this ship is here, hidden in an asteroid with a warning carved in the walls. Mac paused. He wasn't the only one either. Look at these coordinates. A star map appeared on the screen, dotted with dozens of red markers scattered across the galaxy. What are those? Insurance policies. Hidden bases. Weapon caches. Ships in storage. Captain Hayes and other commanders saw what was happening. They watched humanity forget how to fight, forget how to defend itself, forget what it meant to be independent. So they hid things. Left messages. Created a contingency plan in case humanity ever woke up and wanted to remember. Tommy stared at the coordinates, his mind reeling. This is too much. I'm just a mechanic. I fix mining equipment. You're human, Mac corrected. And whether you like it or not, you just became the first person in 200 years to learn the truth. Question is, what are you gonna do about it? Before Tommy could answer, his communicator buzzed. A message from Station Director Vance, the big insectoid creature who ran Nero 9. Tommy Blake. Unusual power signatures detected from your vessel. Federation regulations require immediate inspection. You have 12 hours to comply or face arrest for potential illegal activities. Tommy's hands went cold. They know. Of course they know, Max said. You've been running a pre-Federation military computer for 3 weeks. Every security system on this station has been pinging warnings. I'm surprised they waited this long. What do I do? You have 3 choices, kid. First choice, shut me down, let them inspect the ship, play dumb. They'll probably classify everything, destroy the ship, and give you a stern warning. You go back to fixing mining equipment and forget this ever happened. Second choice. Run. These coordinates, the closest one is 6 days away if you push the Liberty hard. But once you run, you're a fugitive. The Federation will hunt you. Tommy swallowed hard. And the third choice. You call their bluff. You tell them the truth. You show them what you found and dare them to arrest you for learning about human history. Mac's voice turned serious. But I gotta warn you, kid. That choice changes everything. You stop being nobody, and you become the guy who asked questions the Federation doesn't want answered. Tommy looked at the star map, at the warning on the wall, at the files full of forgotten human history. His whole life, he'd been told humans were average. Useful, but not special. Good workers, nothing more. But Captain Hayes and the people who built this ship hadn't been average. They'd been dangerous enough that the Federation needed to make humanity forget they ever existed. Mac, Tommy said slowly. Can this ship still fly? Son, this ship was built to fly through hell and come out shooting. Question is, you ready to find out if you've got any of your ancestors' backbone? Tommy thought about his tiny apartment he'd lost. His dead-end job fixing equipment for aliens who barely noticed him. His whole life spent being invisible and harmless. Maybe it was time to be something else. Plot a course to the nearest coordinates, Tommy said. We're going to see what they left us. Now that's what I like to hear. Strap in, kid. Things are about to get interesting. The Liberty shook as it tore away from Nero 9, alarms screaming behind them. Tommy gripped the controls with white knuckles, his heart hammering in his chest. He'd never stolen anything bigger than a sandwich in his entire life, and now he was fleeing a Federation station in a 200-year-old warship. Station security is launching pursuit craft, Mac announced calmly. 3 light interceptors. Nothing this old girl can't handle. I don't know how to fight. Tommy shouted over the rattling of the ship. Good thing I do. Just keep her steady and let me handle the fancy stuff. The Liberty's weapon systems came online, mechanisms that shouldn't have worked after centuries of neglect. Tommy felt the ship twist and dive with impossible precision, Mac controlling systems he didn't even know existed. Behind them, the pursuit craft gave up after 10 minutes, unable to keep pace with the ancient vessel's maneuvers. 6 days of hard flying followed. Tommy barely slept, surviving on ration bars he'd grabbed from his locker and water recycled by the ship's surprisingly functional life support. Mac taught him the basics of piloting between jumps, his rough voice filling the empty corridors. Your generation was taught to fly Federation standard, Mac grumbled. All smooth curves and computer assistance. That's not flying, that's babysitting. Real flying is manual, instinct, feeling the ship move under your hands like a living thing. The coordinates led them to a system with no star, just dead planets orbiting empty space. Tommy's scanners showed nothing until Mac activated an ancient transponder code. Suddenly, a massive structure appeared on the display, a hollowed-out moon that had been invisible seconds before. Stealth technology, Mac explained. The old kind, that doesn't rely on computers. Just good engineering and materials that eat sensor waves for breakfast. Tommy guided the Liberty through a massive hangar door that opened like the mouth of some ancient beast. When the interior lights activated, his jaw dropped so hard it hurt. Ships. Thousands of them. Row after perfect row of human warships, each one in pristine condition despite centuries of storage. Fighters, destroyers, carriers, vessels whose purpose Tommy couldn't even guess. The hangar stretched for miles in every direction. Welcome to Phi Base Gamma, Mac said quietly. One of 12 armories Captain Hayes and his people built before the Federation finished neutralizing humanity. Tommy climbed out of the Liberty on shaking legs. The hangar was enormous, cathedral-like in its silence. Automated systems hummed softly, maintaining the ships in their long sleep. He walked between them, touching hulls, reading names painted on sides. The Defiant. The Unbroken. The Last Word. The Remember. In the center of the hangar stood a holographic platform. Tommy approached it carefully, and it flickered to life. A woman appeared, life-sized and crystal clear. She wore a military uniform Tommy had never seen before, her face hard and tired. Gray streaked her dark hair, and a scar ran down her left cheek. If you're watching this, then humanity has been pacified. Her voice was steady but filled with barely controlled anger. My name is Admiral Grace Mitchell, United Earth Defense Force. I'm recording this message in the year 2647, 3 months before the final human military installations are scheduled for decommissioning under Federation treaty. Tommy stood frozen, watching history speak to him. The Federation didn't beat us in battle, Admiral Mitchell continued. They beat us with patience. They offered us peace, technology, and a place in their galactic community. And we took it, because we were tired of war. What we didn't realize was the price. The hologram changed, showing schools, universities, media networks. They rewrote our history. Not with guns, but with textbooks and teachers and helpful cultural advisors. In 3 generations, they made us forget we were ever dangerous. They did it to the Krell before us. The Ven before them. 6 species, all neutralized the same way. Not through genocide, but through cultural lobotomy. Tommy felt sick. Everything Mac had told him was true. We're not recording this message to start a war, Admiral Mitchell said, her expression softening slightly. We're recording it to give you a choice. This facility and the 11 others like it contain everything the Federation made us give up. Ships, weapons, training systems, manufacturing capabilities. But more importantly, they contain the knowledge of what humanity used to be. She gestured to the rows of ships behind her. Every vessel here is built on principles the Federation abandoned centuries ago. They're EMP hardened, meaning electromagnetic pulses won't disable them. They have manual backups for every system, so they can't be hacked. They're designed to take damage and keep fighting, because humans learn to build things that survive. The hologram changed again, showing technical specifications that made Tommy's head spin. Modern Federation ships are better in every measurable way. Faster, more powerful, more efficient. But they have a weakness. They rely entirely on computer systems and AI. Take those away, and they're helpless. These ships were built by a species that knew its enemies would always have better technology. So we learned to fight smart instead of fair. Admiral Mitchell's face returned to the screen. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe humanity will stay peaceful and forget all of this existed. Maybe that's for the best. But I couldn't let the knowledge die completely. So we built this insurance policy. She stepped closer to the camera, her eyes intense. To whoever finds this message, understand what you're looking at. This isn't just an arsenal. It's a reminder. The Federation wants every species to believe they're too weak to stand alone, too primitive to govern themselves, too insignificant to matter. They're very good at making people believe that lie. But you're standing in proof that humans were once strong enough to make the entire Federation nervous. The hologram began to fade. What you do with this knowledge is up to you. We can't make that choice from the grave. But remember this, the Federation didn't neutralize humanity because we were evil or warmongering. They did it because we were unpredictable, and unpredictable species can't be controlled. Stay safe. Stay smart. And if you ever need to remind the Federation why they used to fear humans, well, now you know where the keys are kept. The hologram disappeared, leaving Tommy alone in the massive hangar. His communicator suddenly buzzed, making him jump. A message from Federation intelligence, transmitted on all frequencies. Tommy Blake. You are hereby ordered to surrender yourself and the stolen vessel designated USS Liberty. Failure to comply will result in your classification as a terrorist threat to Federation stability. You have 24 hours to respond before we dispatch Inquisitor Lisa Monroe and a full task force to retrieve you by force. Mac's voice crackled through the Liberty's external speakers. Well, kid, you wanted to know what your ancestors were capable of. Now you've got incoming hostiles and the biggest pile of military hardware in the galaxy. Time to decide what kind of human you want to be. Tommy looked at the thousands of sleeping warships around him. Then he looked at his hands, stained with grease from decades of fixing other people's machines, keeping his head down, being invisible. Mac, can you activate the base defenses? Already done. But Tommy, we're talking about Federation intelligence. They're not going to negotiate. They're going to try to erase this place and everyone who knows about it. Then we don't negotiate. Tommy's voice was steadier than he expected. We show them what happens when you push humans into a corner. Admiral Mitchell said these ships were built to survive. Time to see if she was right. Now you're talking like a Hayes family descendant, Mac said approvingly. Though there is one small problem. What's that? This base just sent out an automated signal to the other 11 facilities when we accessed the hologram. They're all waking up now, and they're all asking the same question, has someone triggered the contingency? Tommy's blood ran cold. What's the contingency? The last resort protocol. The one that activates when humanity needs to remember how to bare its teeth. Mac paused. Kid, you didn't just find a hidden base. You just accidentally woke up the entire human military infrastructure from a 200-year nap. Things are about to get real complicated, real fast. The Federation task force arrived exactly 24 hours later, right on schedule. Tommy watched them on the base's ancient sensor systems, 30 warships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were sleek and beautiful, all smooth curves and glowing energy shields. Next to them, the Liberty looked like a rusty toolbox. Leading the fleet was the Adjudicator, a massive cruiser bristling with weapons. Tommy's communicator crackled to life with a woman's voice, cold and professional. Tommy Blake, this is Inquisitor Lisa Monroe of Federation Intelligence. You are surrounded and outgunned. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. Tommy's finger hovered over the response button. His hands were shaking. This was insane. He was a mechanic, not a soldier. What was he doing trying to fight the entire Federation? You gonna answer her or just sit there sweating? Mac asked. I don't know what to say. How about the truth? That usually makes people real uncomfortable. Tommy took a deep breath and opened the channel. Inquisitor Monroe, my name is Tommy Blake. I'm a human mechanic who bought a derelict ship for half a credit. Inside that ship, I found something interesting. Would you like to know what it was? There was a pause. When Monroe spoke again, her voice had an edge to it. I'm aware of what you found, Mr. Blake. Pre-Federation propaganda designed to destabilize modern human integration. Surrender now, and you'll receive psychological treatment instead of imprisonment. Psychological treatment, Tommy repeated slowly. That's a nice way of saying you'll erase my memory and make me forget what I learned. We prefer to call it cultural rehabilitation. Something hot flared in Tommy's chest. You know what I learned, Inquisitor? I learned that 200 years ago, humans had their own military, their own ships, their own choice about how to live. And then the Federation came along and very politely made us forget all of it. The integration was peaceful and beneficial for humanity. Was it? Tommy pulled up Admiral Mitchell's hologram and broadcast it on every frequency. Let's ask her about that. The recording played across every screen in the Federation fleet. Tommy watched the sensor readings as ships suddenly went silent, crews undoubtedly staring at the message. When it finished, there was dead air for a full minute. That message is classified historical material, Monroe finally said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. You're committing multiple violations of Federation law. Funny thing about that, Tommy replied. I checked the Federation Charter while I was waiting for you to arrive. Article 7, Section 3. Every species has the right to access their own historical records. So unless you're saying humans aren't a real Federation species, I haven't broken any laws. Mac's laughter echoed through the command center. Kids got teeth after all. Monroe's response was sharp. You're distorting context. That regulation doesn't apply to destabilizing military propaganda. Destabilizing, Tommy said quietly. You mean information that might make humans ask uncomfortable questions. Like why our history books don't mention we used to have a space fleet. Or why there are no human military academies when every other species has them. Or why humans are the only species in the Federation without the right to defend our own worlds. He was on a roll now, anger replacing fear. You know what else I found in these files? Records of 6 other species you did this to. The Krell used to be warriors, now they're bureaucrats. The Ven used to explore unknown space, now they run cargo routes you assigned them. You didn't conquer anybody. You just made them forget they used to be free. Your simplistic analysis ignores centuries of nuanced diplomatic history. Does it? Then explain something to me, Inquisitor. If the Federation is so fair and peaceful, why are you here with 30 warships to stop one human from reading his own species' history? The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy could almost feel Monroe calculating her next move. When she spoke again, her voice was ice cold. Mr. Blake, you've just broadcast classified material across open channels. Human colony worlds are already experiencing civil unrest as a result. You've forced my hand. I'm authorized to use whatever force necessary to contain this situation. Last chance to surrender. Here's my counteroffer, Tommy said. Leave. Go back to Federation Central and tell them humanity found their old teeth. We're not asking for war. We're just reminding you that we used to be the species that made your probability computers malfunction. That's not how this works. Then come and get me. Monroe's fleet opened fire. Energy weapons streaked through space toward the hollowed moon. Tommy flinched, expecting to die. Instead, the base's defense systems roared to life. Point defense lasers, older than dirt but perfectly maintained, intercepted every shot. Missile batteries launched countermeasures that confused the Federation's targeting systems. Shield generators that shouldn't have worked after 2 centuries blazed to life. What the hell? Tommy breathed. Hayes and his people built these bases to last, Mac said proudly. Now here's where it gets interesting. You see those ships around us? They've been listening to automated systems for 200 years, learning every Federation tactic, every weapons upgrade, every strategic doctrine. We know everything about how they fight. And they know nothing about how we used to. The battle became a stalemate. The Federation fleet couldn't penetrate the base's defenses, but Tommy couldn't exactly leave either. For 3 hours, they exchanged fire, neither side gaining ground. Then something unexpected happened. Tommy's communicator exploded with incoming messages. Not from the Federation, but from human colonies across the galaxy. Mars Station. Europa. New Terra. Titan's Reach. Dozens of settlements, all saying the same thing. We saw the broadcast. We want to know more. We're searching our own records. We're finding things. What do we do? Monroe must have been getting similar reports because her next transmission was frantic. Blake, shut down that signal now. You're destabilizing 200 years of peaceful integration. Or maybe I'm just asking questions you don't want answered, Tommy shot back. More messages flooded in. Some humans were angry at Tommy for stirring up trouble. Others were angry at the Federation for hiding the truth. But most were simply confused, asking questions nobody had asked in 2 centuries. Why don't we have our own defense force? Why are our history books so short compared to other species? Why do we always follow Federation recommendations without question? The questions spread like wildfire. Forums exploded with debate. Human workers on Federation stations started accessing restricted archives. Colony administrators demanded explanations from their Federation liaisons. It wasn't organized resistance, it was just millions of humans suddenly realizing they'd never thought to ask why things were the way they were. You see what you've done? Monroe demanded. You've created chaos. No, Tommy replied. I just reminded people they're allowed to ask questions. You're the one who decided that was dangerous. A new ship dropped out of hyperspace, massive beyond anything Tommy had seen. The sensor readings made his blood run cold. It was twice the size of Monroe's entire fleet combined, bristling with weapons that looked like they could crack planets. "That's the memory ship Oblivion," Mac said quietly. "The Federation's ultimate weapon for cultural problems. It carries quantum processors capable of wiping digital records from entire planets. They're going to erase every copy of Admiral Mitchell's message, every file you broadcast, every question humans are asking. Then they're going to rewrite the narrative so this day never happened." Monroe's voice returned, triumphant now. "Final warning, Blake. Surrender or watch us erase everything you tried to accomplish. In 6 hours, humanity will forget this conversation ever took place." Tommy stared at the massive ship, feeling helpless. He'd fought so hard, revealed the truth, asked the questions. And now they were going to erase it all like it never mattered. "So that's it?" he asked Mac. "We lose." "Well," Mac said slowly, "there is one option. But it's crazy. And it'll either make you a hero or start the biggest mess this galaxy has seen in centuries." "What option?" "We broadcast the coordinates to all 11 remaining bases. We tell every human in the galaxy exactly where their ancestors left the keys to their old military. We dare the Federation to stop millions of people from learning the truth." Tommy looked at the memory ship, then at the rows of ancient warships surrounding him, then at his communicator full of messages from confused humans asking to understand their own history. "Do it," he said. "Send everything." The standoff lasted 3 days. 3 days of human ships arriving from every corner of Federation space. 3 days of Monroe's fleet trying to establish blockades that kept collapsing as more civilians showed up. 3 days of the galaxy watching humanity wake up from a 200-year sleep. Tommy stayed in the base, monitoring communications and surviving on the emergency rations Mac helped him find in the old storage lockers. The food was technically centuries old, but the preservation tech still worked. Everything in these bases was built to last, built by people who understood they were hiding something precious. On the second day, something changed. The civilian ships around Tommy's base began organizing themselves. Captain Davis from the Honest Work took charge, setting up a rotation system so ships could leave for supplies and rest while others took their place. It wasn't a military formation, just regular people figuring out how to maintain a presence. "They're building a wall," Mac observed. "Not a wall to attack, but a wall to stand behind." Smart. The real shock came when professional human crews started arriving. Engineers from Mars Colony showed up with scanning equipment, wanting to document the base before the Federation could erase it. Historians appeared with recording gear. Even some human Federation officials came, not to arrest Tommy, but to see the truth for themselves. One of them, a woman named Rita Kowalski who worked in Federation administration, sent Tommy a private message that made his throat tight. "My grandmother told me stories about human warships when I was little. She said her grandfather served on one before the integration. Everyone told her she was confused, that humans never had a military. I spent 40 years thinking my grandmother was losing her memory. Thank you for showing me she was right all along." But not everyone was happy. Tommy received plenty of angry messages too. Humans who thought he was making trouble for no reason. People who liked their comfortable lives and didn't want to rock the boat. Federation officials who called him a dangerous radical trying to destabilize galactic peace. The breaking point came on the third day. The memory ship Oblivion completed its work, erasing every digital copy of Admiral Mitchell's message from Federation networks. Monroe transmitted a final ultimatum. "Tommy Blake, you have 6 hours to surrender. All civilian vessels have 6 hours to disperse. After that time, we will begin arresting everyone present for obstruction of Federation security operations. This is your final warning." Tommy looked at the crowd of ships on his sensors. There were thousands now, ordinary people who'd put their lives on hold to be here. He couldn't let them get arrested because of him. He was about to agree to surrender when something impossible happened. His long-range sensors lit up with new contacts. Massive numbers of them, all heading toward Earth. "Mac, what am I looking at?" "Every human ship in the galaxy," Mac said, and Tommy heard something like pride in the old eye's voice. "They're converging on Earth. Not to fight. Just to be there." Tommy patched into the public feeds and watched in awe. Civilian vessels from hundreds of colonies were jumping to Earth, forming up in orbit around humanity's homeworld. Mining ships. Colony transports. Medical frigates. Personal yachts. Corporate freighters. Even Federation ships with human crews were abandoning their posts to join the gathering. They formed a wall around Earth, thousands of fragile civilian craft creating a human shield around their species' birthworld. No weapons charged. No aggressive maneuvers. They just sat there, a statement that didn't need words. Monroe's fleet moved to intercept, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. For every Federation warship, there were 100 human civilian vessels. And more kept arriving every hour. A transmission came through on all frequencies. Captain Davis again, but this time broadcasting from a ship near Earth. Inquisitor Monroe, this is Captain Rita Davis, representing approximately 40,000 human vessels currently in Earth orbit. We're not here to fight. We're not here to rebel. We're here to ask a simple question: what are you going to do? Monroe's response was cold. You're in violation of dozens of Federation security laws. All of you. Probably, Davis agreed. So here's the situation as we see it. You can arrest us all, which would require removing basically the entire human civilian fleet from service. That would crash mining operations across 3 sectors, disrupt trade routes throughout the Rim territories, and leave about 50 Federation stations without maintenance crews. Or you can explain to the Federation Council why you need to use military force against 40,000 unarmed civilians whose only crime is wanting to learn their own history. Tommy watched the sensor readings, his heart pounding. This was insane. Beautiful and terrifying and absolutely insane. Monroe didn't respond for a long time. Tommy imagined her running calculations, talking to her superiors, trying to find a way out of the impossible situation humanity had created. You couldn't arrest thousands of people without it looking like oppression. You couldn't use force against unarmed civilians without creating martyrs. And you couldn't back down without admitting the Federation had been wrong. Finally, after 8 hours of silence, a new ship arrived. Not a warship, but a diplomatic vessel. The Federation Council had sent their top mediator, an ancient being named Elder Vaughn who'd negotiated peace treaties for 3 centuries. His transmission was brief. Stand down, Inquisitor Monroe. We need to talk about this situation. All parties, maintain current positions but cease aggressive actions. The Council is convening an emergency session. The emergency session lasted 2 weeks. Tommy listened to the proceedings from his base, surrounded by humans who refused to leave. The debate was fierce. Some council members wanted harsh punishment for the insurrection. Others recognized that humanity had simply asked to know their own history, which technically wasn't illegal. The final decision shocked everyone. The Federation granted humanity autonomous status within the Federation framework. Humans would be allowed to maintain their own defense forces, govern their own worlds with minimal Federation oversight, and most importantly, access and teach their complete history without censorship. It wasn't independence, but it was close. And it came with a caveat that made Tommy smile: humanity would be responsible for recovering and securing all pre-Federation military installations. Basically, the Federation was officially giving humans permission to reclaim everything their ancestors had hidden. The news feeds went crazy. Some species thought the Federation had gone soft. Others quietly began asking questions about their own histories, wondering what they'd forgotten. The Krell started investigating old records. The Ven began questioning why their exploration programs had been scaled back centuries ago. Tommy's name became famous across the galaxy, though he hated the attention. He wasn't a hero or a revolutionary. He was just a mechanic who'd bought a broken ship and asked uncomfortable questions. 6 months after the standoff, Tommy returned to Nero 9. Station Director Vance met him at the dock, his insectoid face unreadable. "Blake. You've caused me enormous amounts of paperwork. Sorry about that." "Don't be. My species underwent similar cultural adjustment 400 years ago. I'd forgotten what that felt like until I watched you humans remember yourselves." Vance paused. "There's a maintenance bay available if you want it. Good location, fair rent. Figured you might want to open that salvage business you talked about." Tommy took the bay and opened Blake's Reclamation, specializing in human history. He spent his days recovering pre-Federation human ships, restoring them, and helping people understand what they'd lost. The Liberty sat in the main bay, pride of place, still bearing her scars from the standoff. One day, a young girl visited with her father. She couldn't have been more than 10, with curious eyes that reminded Tommy of himself before he'd found the Liberty. "Mr. Blake," she asked, "my teacher said humans used to be warriors. Is that true?" Tommy thought about Admiral Mitchell and Captain Hayes. He thought about the thousands of ordinary people who'd formed a wall around Earth with nothing but civilian ships and courage. He thought about Mac, still running in the Liberty's computers, telling old war stories to anyone who'd listen. We were survivors, Tommy said carefully. Still are. And sometimes, surviving means standing up for yourself even when it's scary. Sometimes it means asking questions even when people tell you not to. And sometimes it means remembering things others want you to forget. That sounds hard. It is hard, Tommy agreed. But you know what's harder? Forgetting who you are. Your ancestors made sure you'd have the choice to remember, even if it took 200 years for someone to find what they left behind. The girl looked at the Liberty with wide eyes. Did you really fly that ship against the whole Federation? I flew it toward the truth, Tommy corrected. The Federation just happened to be standing in the way. After the girl left with her father, Tommy climbed into the Liberty and sat in the old pilot's chair. Mac's voice crackled through the speakers. You did good, kid. Hayes and Mitchell would be proud. I just bought a cheap ship and didn't know when to shut up. That's exactly what humanity needed. Someone too stubborn to forget and too honest to lie. The Federation spent 200 years making humans believe they were average, forgettable, nothing special. You reminded them that the scariest species in the galaxy isn't the strongest or the smartest. What is it then? The one that refuses to stay down. The one that hides weapons in asteroids and waits 200 years for the right person to find them. The one that builds walls out of mining ships and calls it diplomacy. That's what humans are, Tommy. You didn't teach them that. You just reminded them they already knew. Tommy smiled and patted the Liberty's console. Outside, the galaxy continued spinning, but something had changed. Humans walked a little differently now. Spoke up a little more often. Asked questions they used to keep quiet. The Federation updated their files on humanity. Tommy had seen the report. It was simple, just 3 lines. Species, human status, autonomous threat assessment, unpredictable. Do not assume compliance. Historical precedent suggests peaceful coexistence requires mutual respect rather than cultural management. Recommend minimal interference. Tommy had paid half a credit for a broken ship on a forgotten asteroid. In return, he'd given humanity back something priceless, the right to remember who they were and choose who they wanted to be. Not a bad trade, he thought. Not bad at all.